Welcome to your awakening journey. Today's destinations include higher consciousness and actualized potential. If all ascenders could now please be seated in a comfortable meditative posture, we're about to ascend. You are now arriving at your host, Brian Henry.
Ascenders, before we jump into this episode, if you've been following along with the show and you've been enjoying it and been assisted by the content, I ask that you share this episode with 3 people that you care about to support them in their own ascension journeys. As we know, as each and every individual becomes a fuller expression of themselves in their journey of their personal ascension, this supports the all. So what do you say you support those that you care about and our collective by, again, just sharing this episode or this podcast with 3 people that you care about. With a unique blend of experience and education that brings together a Western learned understanding of psychology and neurology with Eastern practices including yoga, qigong, and meditation, our guest today has created a system of her own, the vibrational upgrade system. Having spent over 10 years in Asia studying subtle energies and ancient wisdom, and many more working as a yoga and meditation teacher and energy medicine practitioner, she knows what it takes to create for both personal and collective evolutionary change. She's the author of 4 books, including Vibrational Upgrade, A Conspiracy for Your Bliss, Easing Humanity's Evolutionary Transition, and Reasonable Dragons, How to Activate the Field of Possibilities with Logical Magic is the New Normal. She delivers activations and energy clearings, and she's helping people upgrade their vibration and activate their magic. And today, Dr. Alison K joins us on the Awaken podcast to help us do the same. Dr. Alison, thank you for joining me for what I know is going to be a thoroughly enjoyable conversation and podcast.
I'm happy to be here with you, Brian. I'm excited to see what direction this goes in.
So I'm playing around with a new starting question to kick things off. This may or may not be the first question I continue to ask my guest. You're actually going to be the first one that I start the episode with this one. Interpret it however you'd like.
Okay.
Who are you and why are you here?
I'm a being of this universe in a human body as Alison J.K. in this lifetime, and I seem to be here to help humanity during what's considered its greatest evolutionary leap ever. I seem to have done massive amounts of work in other lifetimes that I'm still learning how to allow to come through and out. Whereas like I used to require my hands on someone, a thought, not even saying it out loud, not even doing any kind of energy medicine process. I'm helping people manifest or shift into a healing, like with COVID. So I seem to have, what I said last night to my mastermind was on our call was, where my consciousness goes, it seems like it expands afterwards. So like I've never been a follower, and in fact when something becomes trendy, I veer away from it, but I seem to be ahead 5 to 10 years depending on who you are and what you're doing. In this group I'd be less far ahead, but like for example the International Living show on HGTV, I was in Asia being taken to different apartments in Taiwan for where I could live because I used my contract for my international school teaching an admin position stipend rather than living in the expat provided housing for us and staying in the expat only community. I wanted to immerse myself. So I Eat, Pray, Love, I worked with that indigenous healer in that same shop in Bali, in Ubud, Bali, before she got there. And I'm like, I had that same experience. So when I focus on something, it allows it to expand. And so I seem to be a harbinger of these new times and this new era in helping. I know my mission coming back from Asia was, man, if people in the West only understood how much more thriving was possible and is possible if we went in and learned how to work with our consciousness and learned how to work with subtle energy to optimize our own mind, body, spirit systems. So that was my mission coming back from the East. And I had already been practicing energy medicine sessions. It was already alongside my second revenue stream to my primary one as a classroom teacher in the public school system. I went into the international school system not only to elevate my level of abundance and adventure in my life, because a dry, stale, flat living is not what I'm about, and I can't tolerate a predictable life for the next 3 decades or 4 decades. So I went into the international school system, but I specifically took the job offered to me in Taiwan because I knew that both the traditional Chinese culture allowed to express itself in Taiwan as opposed to the mainland, as well as in the Indian yogic culture, the Hindu culture, where I also spent time getting trained as a yoga teacher. Those two not only understood our subtle energy system and subtle energy, but they still came from it in its practices and the way the society is organized in current day. Whereas we had alchemists go underground after about the age of reason. So that's why there have been in the past decades words used like quackery or woo-woo in dismissal of it. And so the second part of my mission coming back from Asia was to professionalize the field of energy medicine. It is a science. It is a predictable, observable, reproducible science based on observed natural phenomena studied for 5,000 years. It uses the third scientific method of naturalist observation. So that's who I am. I love to laugh as well. I love to be in my body. I love to dance. I love to climb. I love to hike. I like to bungee jump. I love to get my bare feet on the earth in different places like South Africa. I was very aware of walking on like amethyst and rose quartz while I was there. I love going into natural springs. I love the earth. I love playing on the earth. And I love taking people out on the earth. And how's that for a start?
It's a fun start because it sounds like you love to have fun.
Yeah. And I love to see. So the whole thing behind me, I don't even call myself an energy healer because while I still do help where needed, while I used to work on healing physical manifestations, I have a whole lot more fun because I had to go so high to work with something once it became physicalized, whether it was a tumor or it was colonic cancer or it was chronic back pain or chronic knee pain or somebody just obese or dense with old baggage and not obese. I had to go, so their musculature just kind of was unformed and they just had a lot of excess weight. Like I had to go so high to work on somebody like that. So since about 2016, 15, I've been working more with, instead of dematerializing what had already become matter, bringing into matter what had yet to form from energy. So that's a whole lot more fun for me, and I do demand fun. And living up to our human potential is what I'm all about, like seeing what else is possible. So when I list things about that I love to do, I mean, I want to learn, I want to get my pilot's license. You know, I'm in a body, I'm on planet Earth. I want to play, I want to do everything possible, you know, that doesn't pose ridiculous risks to myself within reason, obviously. So it's just like living up to our potential and taking advantage of being in a body on the planet and having a joyous time doing that, as opposed to the suffering paradigm.
What I'm gathering from this is the focus on a positive focus towards what wants to be created, opposed to the trying to fix or heal or mend what we are deeming broken.
Brian, did you catch the title of my first book?
Your first book? Yes.
What if there's nothing wrong?
Yeah. What if there's nothing wrong?
You get it.
Yeah.
Book that started as my dissertation. And then it became, what if there's nothing wrong? And I wrote that my 10th year in Asia in traditional tea houses after work, after grading my students' essays overnight, like till 6 a.m., drinking green tea in a traditional tea house. So I came back to the States with that presentation. I'm very Chineseified in that, and I had to actually hire a local American to make the English become more American English as opposed to Chinglish, which is what I was kind of using at the time. I had become relatively bilingual. So yeah, what if there's nothing wrong is the approach. And you know what will help inform this in a bit more of a linear way for listeners? I think you already get it, is I went into my college bachelor's program as a psych major. My mom, like, I don't know, age 13-ish, had said, Alison, you have a really natural way with people. Why don't you consider becoming a psychologist? So I spoke with her about that a little bit more. I listened, I trusted her intuition. I listened to how it sat in me, and it was a yes, so I did it. Third semester in, I'm like, well, you gotta be kidding me. You're not teaching me anything about like how to be the happiest, most joyous versions of ourselves. You're focused on like the hardwiring in the brain because you're busy proving yourself as a science. You're focused on the industrial application and the capitalistic use of in HR or management. With this, you're not showing me anything about me or us as individuals as a holistic mind, body, spirit system. So I left the major. And so from there on in, I've been like basically asking that question and finding like tool after tool of how do we be the happiest, most thriving versions of ourselves holistically in mind, body, and spirit. That's what it is.
Is that the question for you? And if not, what is?
So I've been saying, it's a good question, Brian. I've been saying for about 20 something years, the universe helped me increase my tolerance for bliss. So that's more a mantra than a question, but there's an implied question there.
Yeah, I like that. Help me increase my tolerance for bliss. Now, explain to me the choice of the word tolerance in that concept.
There's so many places I could go, but so later on, when I was in the international school system, I ended up teaching AP Psych. The year before, I had designed what I call the global psychology course for high school juniors and seniors, and it was a combination of using the Dalai Lama's texts with Western psychologists, neurologists, various traditions that come together every other year, and he'd have a conference with them to talk about the effects of meditation and how the West views the psyche, the psychology, the bodily health. Out of that came the beginning of measurement of the effects of meditation. It started at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, as well as at San Diego State. So did you ever see the picture of the monk with all the electrodes on its head?
Can't say I have.
It was a cover of Time. That came out of the Dalai Lama Summit. So I would use the College 101 Psych textbook, and then I would bring in the Dalai Lama's publishings of these biannual summits meetings as the text for global psychology. Then I taught AP. They asked me to teach AP Psych. So I got to, with my awareness now at like 20 something years of having been a meditation teacher, because I was teaching in the classroom too, and being energy medicine practitioner, I was now like reviewing the psych information I had taken in as my first major, and I was starting to see new awarenesses from the perspective I was now approaching it from. And one of them, to answer your question, is that in college Psych 101 textbooks, there's 2 separate chapters on perception and sensation. So the first thing, when our 5 physical senses pick up data out around us to touch or smell or taste or hear or see, that's the first chapter or the first step. Then it goes into what we're going to call the ego mind, which is a yogic and meditative term or Buddhist term. And the ego mind sorts through its files of what it already knows. And if it's a new sensation coming in through our physical 5 senses, it won't have the appropriate data. So if I'm in Asia, I'm at a fruit stand, and I see a fruit that's exotic to me, what my mind will go is, oh, that looks like what I've seen before, a pear. And then it will do a further file data check, and I'm in Asia, so let's call it the Asian pear. So why I am saying that is the structure of our ego mind, both from the meditative. So Buddha took out of the yogic wisdom or tome of wisdom, he took one half of it. He took the meditation, or it's more than one half. In yoga, I'm trained in ashtanga. It has 8 limbs. Only one is the body postures, the asanas in yoga class. That's so much the focus in the Western studios. 5 are about how to work with the mind. So Buddha took meditation up out of yoga. So when we talk about Buddhism, that is the practice of meditation originally sandwiched within the whole yogic tomb. So in the Buddhist understanding, it's called the ego mind. You can totally see the teacher in me. And the ego mind has been given to us to keep us safe, to protect us. So back to Western psych, each of these 5 senses have what is called, or are called, thresholds on them, so that we don't go crazy picking up all the actual multidimensional data that's actually there. So when we start to meditate, back to Buddhism in the East, these thresholds slowly, for our highest and best only, open up a little bit. So that's why one of the outcomes, you start to have more clairvoyance, or you start to have more clairaudience, because our consciousness is expanding, and a part of that expansion is we have the capacity now to handle a little bit more data because we have a more expanded consciousness. Okay, so if the nature of the ego mind in the divine design of a human is to keep us safe, so that it helps us navigate the physical plane. When we're in the jungle and there are unknown threats, lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, the ego mind goes into, do I go into fight or do I go into flight with this new thing that is something I have to guard against because I don't yet know it. That's the whole adrenal complex and the fight or flight syndrome. The point being is that we have natural set points mentally that our mind naturally is wired to prefer. So to come out of a comfort zone, people typically require crisis, unless they're working with me, frankly, in a proactive way, or with meditation and yoga to expand their consciousness proactively. So when I say, universe, help me increase my tolerance for bliss, I'm asking for events to come in that helps peel my ego mind's protectiveness back.
So what is it being implied here, that the ego mind can impede the experience of bliss?
Absolutely, yes. And it can impede any time we go for anything new. So to expect ourselves to have a rocking, phenomenal yes about going for something that's new, that challenges us, to expect our system to be totally on board and there to be no resistance, no doubt, no fear is unrealistic. That's why we just do it anyway, with mindful awareness. But with clearing and activations, I make that easier.
To feel comfortable in the territory of the unknown.
To be more predisposed to choose the unknown, knowing that that's the tool for the new times we're in now. The intellect has been fantastic since the age of reason. It calmed down all the superstitiousness in the West. It brought in structure. It brought in, zoning laws. It brought in science. It brought in order. We're in a new time now. We've gone too far into that pendulum, and now it's coming back, but it's in an entirely new context. From my understanding, all the work I did in a 2.5-year radio show that was weekly around the Mayan Galactic Alignment 2012, December 21st, and I was there at Chichen Itza on that day. In the yogic, Yogi Bhajan of the yoga culture also talks about 2012 having been a marker from an old yuga to a new yuga or era. And that's not the only two that talk about 2012 having been a marker. I understand that what we're in right now is the turning around the bend. We've been in the crumbling of the old paradigm from 2012 to about 2020, COVID on the tail end of that. And now we're around the bend into the building stages of the new era. And what's required there is for us to step into this role where we recognize that our lives are showing up the way they are because of the choices we're making, and because of the way we perceive our lives, and because of the way we perceive what we can and can't attain. That's very Western. What we what we are and are not worthy of living as a life that possibly we could desire when we see somebody else doing it on social media, scrolling through, or in a movie. But we would stop ourselves. We would do that dismissing thing. The ego mind would go, no, whether it's from like conditioning or parental imprints or past life trauma or this lifetime trauma or some other sources. Like there's a lot of unconscious beliefs and judgments and evaluations we have based on all these different factors, like our parents or our conditioning or our traumas, where our mind is more predisposed to protecting us and keeping us safe. So then there's also unconscious beliefs around, I don't deserve to be free. That could come in from seeing a dad in drudgery his whole life, working to provide for the family, a mother working alongside him in drudgery, both of them feeling very heavy with the obligations and the excitement of raising their own family, but it being a total framing of obligations. So that imprint, if it's happening from 0 to 2, it's an imprint. If it's happening from 2 to 8, it becomes an unconscious conclusion. Oh, that must be how life works on planet Earth, which is what we're asking from ages 2 to 8, as our neurology starts getting wired. So we end up with, it's only about at most 10, I want to say 10%. I used to say 15%, but I know that's not right from the decades of doing this work. Our conscious mind thoughts that we hear, that cause us to make the choices we make, that we hear, is at most, the science is 15%, I'm saying 10% at most, conscious. So 90% of what makes the choices of what we do and don't choose to do in our lives and with our lives is all unconscious and subconscious. So what I spend my time doing is running a boatload of clearings and activations on the unconscious and subconscious to flush those blocks and bring that consciousness forward. So then my students end up, and my clients end up with more awakened consciousness at the frontal lobe to make choices from. That's what I meant when I said I can do activations that gear you to be more friendly towards the unknown and to understand it's actually the tool to welcome the new, and what is actually one of the, I would say, first of the 3, or one of the top 3 guidelines for this new era, to welcome the unknown and to embrace it. Another one of those top 3 would be, whenever your mind is asking for the how, drop down into the heart and surrender. And I know you're nodding your head, so that's relatively familiar, but I teach stuff at a very nuanced level, because I feel like there's so much on social media that people are out there saying that's not accurate, and it sets people up for failure, or it sets people up to get down on themselves if they don't manifest that big thing they've been going for, using the law of attraction for 3 months. In the heart, in another example, is you could hear about the idea of surrender, and you could be applying it at just the wrong time, when it's required for you to hold the vision, when it's required for you to take action based on that intuitive hit you got. Take the action. You don't surrender at that point. But when you see something about surrender, people like applying it across the board, and that's not an accurate teaching. So the other thing that I want to add in there, I'm glad to hear your response, is the heart. Intuitive guidance that leads to the inspired action. So I'm doing feminine and masculine. Intuitive guidance, feminine, that leads to the inspired action step, masculine, doesn't come necessarily in this like really groovy way that's like a far out vision. I'm making a little bit of fun here. It's just the heart simply like being uplifted. Yes, that feels good. Yes, I like that. Yes, go there. Yes, have her as a guest. One choice at a time. Choice after choice after choice, co-creating our lives in alignment with allowing the divine's voice. So in yoga, to yoke with is what yoga means, the divine. I see it as the crown chakra is the higher self. And once we've done enough work, we have not only that connection to our higher self, all above here, all these other chakras are to the divine, increasingly. So the more that we come into that alignment, it's a dance. I'm doing a qigong movement now. It's a dance between like, okay, I'm letting life flow through me unobscured as I take these action steps. I hear the guidance, I make a choice, I take the action step, and I let it organically get created rather than needing to know the plan like the mind wants, and the 5-step process like the mind wants, and the how like the mind wants, and the doubts and the fears to be allayed like the mind wants before step 1's ever taken.
I've definitely felt or come across this notion, and I felt a sense of interest and resonance with this approach of moment to moment alignment with the inspiration. Now, you mentioned once we've done enough work that we can tune into that. What comes up for you when you consider how do we bring ourselves to really be attuned to that inspiration and that divine guidance?
So you can have it today just listening to me. Like, you're getting an upgrade. It's called entrainment. It's a technical term for it. When there's somebody with a more expanded consciousness and a higher vibration, a law, it's a universal law. The higher vibration entrains up the lower vibration. And it also, frankly, causes reactivity like fear, or I could go on a tangent. That's not what you asked, so I won't. So I don't want to make it sound like you can't have that guidance today. That's why I said, if you feel lighter, if you feel like happier about making a choice that's presented to you, then that's guidance. What I'm saying is, after a certain amount of clearing, so your question, here's the answer. I have seen it require what I was talking about before, the clearing out of all what I've called the back of the house consciousness, the subconscious blocks and the unconscious blocks, like the conclusions that are unconscious, like he always gets what he wants. I have to fight for what I want. I'm unworthy of receiving. I can't have financial freedom and work a business. I have to have an employer that's safer. Flushing all of that to the surface, because they correspond. Each of those beliefs, depending on the topic of life, correspond to the relevant chakra, because every chakra covers a domain of life. So when I say back of the house consciousness, I also mean it's causing blocks at the relevant chakras part of the body, and in both the musculature around it, as well as the hormonal gland, because every endocrine gland is covered by the chakra system, as well as your central nervous system, because the biggest gathering of neuroreceptors are at where each chakra is along the spine. Those are our two main communication channels: electrical, central nervous system; chemical, hormonal. So the chakra system, for me, that's in part why I say it's a science. It's not just about like becoming more awakened. It's also about like vital life force energy, which is the translation of chi or prana or ki of Reiki. Vital life force energy pulsing throughout your body. That's going to help you, because if it's able to run throughout your body, that, my second book goes into this a lot, that increased level of universal life force contains an energy that the universe recognizes. So that will gradually bring you more into alignment at a higher vibratory level, and an easier to work with the law of attraction, because the universe more easily recognizes a non-mental, closed down, dense energy. The universe will feel your closed downness, and it will deliver. That's when the law of attraction seems to work against someone. When something shows up, you just keep repeating the same pattern. What I'm talking about is getting around the bend into the other side of that, when you are able to actually work it to your advantage. So I don't want people to come away with the idea that it's only at the head level. It's totally the body too, because it just gives your field resonance for the universe to pick up on.
And the foundation for this change is the clearing of subconscious belief and blocks.
Yeah, and when I was in, I don't know what year it was, Brian, but like what year of being an energy medicine practitioner, I was in a session. It was like the client's third or fourth session of a package of 10. It was alongside the classroom teaching still in the States before I moved into the international school system to Asia. And my hands were over the second and third chakra, over her abdomen womb. And she was getting great results. We were both thrilled with what was happening. And I looked up and I asked, universe, how do I increase and how do I get more robust results for my clients? That was one of the 2 questions I asked that led me ultimately to move into the international school system to Asia. And I feel like I've been having that question answered ever since. So when I meditated before an energy medicine modality, I have 5 under my belt before I created a vibrational grade system. And the system I created is a combination of mindfulness from the yogic background and energy medicine, but it's an applied mindfulness after the clearings and activations. So what I'm saying is, it's not, clearings are not the only way. I was seeing in meditation year 5 that I was having more consciousness expanded. I was having access to more consciousness. I know that from minutes 20 to 30, if you have a 30-minute practice, that's where you're starting to flush the subconscious, you're starting to clear it. I wanted to speed that up for my clients. So while clearings are not the only way, meditation is another way. I see that, like, I remember saying this within the last 2 years, a client of mine who was in my mastermind program for her 2nd year, so she'd been working with me at that point for about 2.3 years. She was getting results that it had taken me about double the amount of time to get to. So in fact, I had ended up speeding up the results on behalf of my clients. So there are addressing all of the unconsciousness. I don't mean to say you lay on a chair in therapy and get hypnotized into your subconscious and that's how you do it at all. I don't mean listening to a YouTube video where it's a solfeggio frequency and it's helping your subconscious at all. I mean, like, working with somebody who knows intuitively how to hear and perceive you, and hear and perceive what your lockdown is in your consciousness, and start to get the windfall flushing so that this opens, so that now you have more vital life force energy flowing. It's a quicker way to get results than your meditation alone.
Because of that entrainment.
Not only the entrainment, because I'm taking parts of your consciousness that were once locked down in a conclusion that's erroneous, that you're not even, un means not, sub means under, you're not even consciously hearing, right? I don't mean to sound as if you don't know what un and sub mean, it's to emphasize the point. They're not thoughts that are conscious. So you need to having somebody get your back who can see. I had people do this to me back in the day, like when I felt like I wasn't seeing, there was something I wasn't seeing, right? You know that feeling, right?
Within yourself?
Yeah. There's just something I'm not seeing, or there's something I'm avoiding, or there's something there's something that if I were to have it released, I would have more a capacity and access to more, right? So getting somebody to get your back who has eyes that can see accurately, that doesn't project. It's like the #1 commandment. I actually have 12 commandments with my vibrational grade practitioners when they're in training. It isn't as structured as it sounds, but honestly, from the different modalities I've been trained in, as I've been in practice sessions, I've seen people just sit there and project. Just project. No clear seeing.
You mean from the practitioners?
Yeah. And then I have people come to me, and I'm not even talking about like beginners. There's some high level people out in this field of self-help, and I don't want to call some of them energy medicine, that I've had so many people come to me mildly traumatized from work they've done with somebody else, because they've been told this is a block of theirs, or they've been told this is the way they are, or even in a reading, they've been told this about a past life, and it has locked down that person into fear. So you want to be careful about who you're selecting to get your back. But yes, somebody who can see in the place that is the shadow, or that is a serious jug of water, mate. How big is that?
I'm thinking like 2.5 liters. I love this thing.
Holy cow, no doubt. I love it. That's like a mini water cooler. You could just like stick it in the sand.
And it's carrying me some positively charged blessed water.
Yay.
But that may be a story for another day. I'm gonna intervene just a little bit. I had a absolutely beautiful experience this morning, blessing my water. Yeah.
Well, I'm up here where I'm visiting. When we're done, I'm going for a natural mineral bath. I'm in natural mineral spring area. There's natural mineral springs with different mineral compositions. So there's different ailments that are helped when you go to a different spring. There's an island in Italy, just north of Sicily, that I went to for a month and did that too. Ischia, Ischia. So these natural mineral springs, like they're brown. Like I'll get into a bath and it's brown because or brownish orange because of the iron. So yeah, I mean, I just did a video last week for my followers talking about water is supposed to have minerals in it. When we purify water, it's because we don't prefer the sulfur taste. Water is supposed to taste sweet naturally, and when we get all the minerals out, so people like the flavor, it loses all the medicinal value. And then you look at our soil too, in America, particularly with a monocrop ag, we're not getting the minerals in the soil. So if you rotate your crops, you fix different minerals in. When you monocrop soy or corn, for example, you just get the same mineral and the same drainage of the same minerals. So to get the full mineral profile, which helps our central nervous system, a mineral supplement is needed, or bathing in baths like this, where your skin takes in the minerals. But I remember when I first came back from Asia, there were a fair amount of people that were coming to me, and there was simple mineral imbalances. When there was like this huge diagnosed thing where they're on meds and they want to get off the meds, and it's just simple mineral balance, man. Sorry.
I know we're kind of detouring, but I'm totally okay with it. I'm feeling inspired to continue down this road, and maybe we'll reel it back in.
Mind, body, and spirit.
There you go. And I think that's perfect. That's the very lesson we're being taught here.
This is my organic green tea, unsweetened. Yeah. So that's what this color is. Not a urine sample. Or beer. I've been stopping for cups. I thought I was drinking beer on a Sunday afternoon. No.
You are supposed to be on vacation. Let's give you a quick little shout out for our listeners. Dr. Alison here is taking this time to spend with me in the midst of a vacation. It just goes to show your commitment to serving others, and I deeply appreciate that.
I appreciate you saying that. I love what I do. And it's been an interesting challenge in a way at times to navigate, like when to drop the leading in the serving, because I love what I do. And so when I do what I love, I share it with my followers and with my students. And so, yeah, it's an interesting thing to just have something on my own anymore, you know?
Knowing when to rest.
Well, that's, yeah, I love, I'm really good at like laying on a beach. I'm really good at that.
In this day and age, that is a skill.
I used to go to Thailand in between my semesters and Chinese New Year, and I would get $5 Thai massages daily, and I'd go to like different holistic clinics or Buddhist monasteries and visit them and get more treatments, and I dance at night. I, by the way, don't need beer or alcohol anymore. I haven't drank in, like, I might have tequila. I'm really good tequila from Mexico because I go down there a lot on New Year's. But I'm permanently buzzed. It's a perma-buzz, this work. Like, it's just, and my students say it too. I mean, like, alcohol's a depressant. It lowers the vibe, you know? I remember one time, because it was like kind of required your first and second year of being an expat in Taiwan, or an expat in Hong Kong, or an expat in Bangkok, or an expat over in Asia, to drink like a sailor. So it was like my second year, and I had already learned Qigong, and I was on the roof of my friend's house, doing my Qigong on a Saturday morning. And I was like, Alison, do you understand that with this hangover here, how lethargic your energy is? Do you understand that alcohol is a depressant, and what you're practicing right now is to generate more light? You're counterproductive here. And from there on in, I just stopped that lifestyle.
Sounds to me that you're high off life.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem that miraculous. It seems kind of like, it's been an important point to make. It seems like I didn't go through like a big trauma or drama to be me and to learn these. I just had a natural wonder, and I had to learn how to like allow it to come through. Like through my early years and up to about age, I still do it, but like I would tromp through the woods in under 10 until about 15 with my older brother, the woods all around our house where we grew up. And he would like jump on the broken limbs in front of me, and I'd be like connecting with everything. The dragonflies, the critters over the creek, the grass, the little clovers in the grass, the trees, the tree limbs. I would just feel so connected to everything. And then in my teens, I started to journal write, which I understood later was a way to let my higher self's voice come in. So it's been an aspect of me just learning how to allow this consciousness to be embodied and worked with for its highest value for myself and humanity. Frankly, I haven't needed a trauma. I don't have a story or a journey. And I'm using sarcasm, which I don't typically do, but I was, by so many different PR people, asked, you have to find a struggle point that made you become who you are in order to give us this pitch to present you in your bio. And I'm like, I don't have one. So when you just said you're high on life, it seems important to like say what I just said, because it's not always about drama and trauma.
There's this idea that is a inevitable factor or stimulus for growth.
I know.
And I know that plenty do grow through those experiences, and even personally, I've gone through some what I describe as tougher times, and I've learned from them, and I'm grateful for them. But I think that idea that suffering is inevitable, I believe we're beginning to transcend that even.
Yeah. I have found in the last couple of years, I've been saying, if you're addicted to the struggle paradigm, I'm not the right mentor for you. So if we look at the fact that I've also been saying that we're in the biggest paradigm shift ever that humanity's ever faced, that would endorse what you just said. Yeah.
Tell me more about that paradigm shift. What do you believe it is that we are shifting into?
If we look at the protests in the streets in countries that don't typically have protests that have happened for the last couple of years, Chile, not Moscow, but other parts of Russia, like if we look all over the world, there are voices rising up to be heard against the old institutional patriarchy at times. I mean, in America, we have yet to elect a female president. We had to elect a black president before we could elect a female president. So we accept African Americans before we accept just feminine. I don't even see race. I see shades, and I appreciate like pretty shades, but I don't see, I'm like the whole thing with America that it does with race and the whole talk about that. I understand injustice, and when something's misaligned, people are out marching and to bring it back into alignment. So the new paradigm is where everything is into alignment. Everything, where there's been abuses of power, so that's misaligned, it fades away and it comes into alignment. So that's why I talk from a more, a less like BLM, Me Too, like the specific movements there, or even the gender thing. Like the new paradigm is where the masculine and the feminine are so balanced. I see the gender questions that are happening now in a way, this is gonna sound really radical, as just the feminine and masculine coming into so much balance that they don't even know what they are. So, I look at things from a really different perspective, from a very holistic perspective, right? And so this new paradigm is one that there's not suffering, as you just said. There's not polarity. And even in the yin yang, that TCM, traditional Chinese medicine TCM, is based on, like how the black has white, little white circle, how the white has little black circle in it. That's implying what you said, like you need the struggle that you were quoting from other people. The struggle needs to happen in order to grow. I don't even know that polarity in the way the yin yang's presented is accurate or going to be accurate anymore. What I see is we're becoming more galactic. Like if you look at more and more people have been looking at the eclipses the last couple of years, more and more space travel started again. There's been full moon on like the Washington Post and the New York Times. Oh no, the Wall Street Journal was when it blew my mind. There was a picture of a full moon on the Wall Street Journal for the first time in the last couple of years. People are looking up more. We're becoming more, this is gonna sound funny, we're becoming more galactic. Like, it's not about like these divisions and this polarity and this, that's why we're seeing it intensify. It's like a fever eating peak before it breaks. The polarity is intensifying, so there's all these different factions in the division, and I can't follow you, I can't hear what you're saying, you're not using words I'm used to, and we can't have a discussion with differing views because it's going to come to like hate words and hate crime, and all of that noise is just the fever peaking before it breaks. And one of my first career was in politics. I'm doing this work to raise consciousness so that the political change I was going for in the early 90s, meaning conserving our environment and coming off the fossil fuels, I left and said and got through my guidance, if you're going to go for that change, it's going to be more effective to do it one consciousness at a time. So I've been doing this but my first career is in politics. I have a very collective, focused political view behind my work and motive. So what I see is a lot more unity. I talk about this a lot in my third book, Reasonable Dragons. That's the only one that's on Audible. What I see in the new paradigm. More unity, much more heart-centric, much more capacity of people to identify that's my mind and discipline the mind and keep the mind under wraps and use the mind as the tool it's meant to be used instead of the dominant force. Much more heart-based, which means much more divine-based, which means much more loving, much more compassionate, much more unconditional loving, and not getting cynical or sarcastic in the face of it seems too good to be true. Like being able to handle it's so good without like waiting for the other shoe to drop.
An increased tolerance for bliss, you might say.
Nice one, Brian. Yes. Yes. So I see, like, I was born at a perfect time. Like, I was born the year Martin Luther King got assassinated, and the year that Robert Kennedy got assassinated, and the year Jimi Hendrix died. I mean, I was born like in these crazy revolutionary times. And I wasn't brought up by hippie parents. I was brought up by, I asked them, like, why are you guys so conservative? You're baby boomers. So like, well, we're on the tail end of baby boomers, so we're not that. Anyway, they were before baby boomers. So I can see, like, from a divine perspective, the placement of me with this consciousness at that time, in these times, it's very strategic. The divine plan of it all.
The divine plan for the collective?
In my partner, yeah. To all of us to shift in the new paradigm where it's, again, I find this week, my consciousness is really being guided to talk about dismissiveness. Like where your ego mind just can't handle what a person's saying. Like it's too positive, it's too Pollyanna. Like we are creating the physical reality by our projections from our minds. You're nodding, you know that. Enough people in your listening audience know that too if you're having a podcast about awakened consciousness. So if we're creating the reality with our projections and we begin to work on our projections that much more, does that not mean we can create a beautiful reality? So at some point we get to the point of working on our consciousness is enough to take responsibility. You know, this means be responsible for the energy you bring. We're changing. You're following, Brian? Like it's coming out of the time where we're a victim to something outside of ourselves, from any completely pointable socioeconomic status or suffering like the Jews or slavery or women, all of the things you can point to and say, that's why I don't have enough money. I'm beyond like you being able to use that cultural, no, just done. We are in a brand new time and you cannot play victim to anything outside of you or even inside of you. Clearing the limiting beliefs so that what we then project, what we're moving into, still answering your question, is where we're all more responsible instead of blaming something outside of ourselves for what's happening in our lives.
The way
and
that it's...
then we can step into co-creator.
The way that it's coming in for me that I'm gonna sum up what you're doing a fantastic job of describing is
Thanks, man.
taking radical responsibility for what we're projecting and realizing that that which we are experiencing in the world is always
somebody else's. It's all projection. So if it is, then we can create something better.
if we take responsibility for
Radical
our own state of.
Why do you use radical?
Well, the most honest way to answer that is that's exactly how I heard it. And when I hear something and I hear the inspiration to share it, I do. Let's see if something wants to come up there. It just feels to be a way to describe taking full responsibility. There's approaching the cusp of, okay, yes, I know I'm creating my reality. I know my choices matter, right? It's just starting inching into that power as a conscious creator. But when I use that phrase radical responsibility, at least the energy that I feel from that is it's not just a matter of my choices matter. It's this is entirely up to me, and I have full. Now I might be going a little bit too often to one end of the coin, but I'm going to adjust it, which is my experience is a projection of my thoughts, my beliefs, what I'm putting out, my actions, and really just stepping fully into our divine power to create what it is we desire. Now, I want to also address the other side of the coin because I think it's important not to go too far off into one direction, and also mention, the being humble, staying open, receiving, surrendering, but knowing when it's time for which, and going beyond that and not making it about one or the other, but bringing both those things together.
So what you're doing right now is, if somebody heard me with an egoic filter, helping to bring them back to center. I didn't even know that's what you were doing. Where I was going to go with it was there's about 10% of randomness.
10% of randomness.
So I did a ton of karmic clearing and training around karma while I was in Asia, and I spent tens of thousands of dollars to get trained in how to clear karma. I'm not saying that I'm incredibly proficient at it. Karma is the most persnickety thing, and it comes up when it comes up. So it can seem random. And then I'm different than the other spiritual teachers out there. I don't believe that everything we're creating. I believe that we're responsible. When you say radically responsible, where I wanted to come back to was that not everything. There's about 10-ish% that's random, that you can't have like the part of you that may take over responsibility for things that are in your life and say, I was thinking this, or how did I do this miscreation? How did I manifest this bad thing? What was I thinking? What's in my field? Like, I've seen so many people like just get on themselves for like something that shows up that's undesirable. There is about 10%-ish that's random. And karma comes in, like a lot of the times it seems to kick in somebody's 30s or 40s. Like, just seems like if you haven't taken care of things proactively, something explodes. It's not midlife crisis, although I think it's been misidentified prior as a midlife crisis. It's a lot of the time nowadays earlier than that. But there is a certain amount of randomness that you're not responsible for. And it could include being at an intersection at a time in an accident that you weren't causing or you weren't meant to be in. It can be, there is a level of randomness. There's just way too many of us, and there's just way too many variables in a big ass algorithm to be able to take responsibility for absolutely everything.
And I think what can end up happening, and you've, I'm sure, seen this, is the pressure that one can place, or the blaming of oneself that can happen when things that are not preferred end up playing out, and that being this means of just withholding love for oneself, which only exacerbates the sense of not wanting this.
But is that like not maybe even the lesson? Like to understand, like I spent a lot of time helping people go back to neutral. I know that we're running out of time. That was
I noticed that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is one question I definitely want to have the opportunity to ask you. So just to confirm here, we do have to begin to wrap things up, huh? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So tell you what, I'm sure we can continue having an amazing conversation, but I do want to thank you for the amazing conversation that we've already had up to this point.
Thank you, Ryan. It was likewise. Thank you for being a good show host, and you do a great job listening and receiving and absorbing and feeding back. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Now, like I said, I do have one last grand finale question that I want to ask you. But before I do, was there anything that you'd like to share about in terms of if someone would like to connect with you, work with you?
Okay, so I have underneath the computer, because I'm not in my normal workspace for podcast interviews, as you guys have become clear. This is my 4th book. I'm going to raise the computer screen for a moment and pull out a book from underneath. This is The Dragon Master Creatrix, Conversations with a Female Spiritual Teacher for These New Times. If you put in that title and put .com after it, there are a bunch of really fun bonuses you get for free if you buy the book on Amazon. And that includes me at sacred sites, sending energy medicine from the sites. One of them is focused on abundance from a stone circle in Ireland, and on manifesting powers from a stone circle in Ireland. And then 2 of them are from Mayan ruins on top of the Pyramid of the Sun, and then the Pyramid of the Moon to balance the yin yang.
Wow.
And then a whole month of membership with me where I do these clearings and activations we just spent how long talking about. So there's 4 different deliverables, and Activate Your Magic, a month-long membership. It's $97. You get it for free. So you get that and those 3 videos. That means full moon sacred activations, new moon sacred activations. Those are clearings and activations. A Zoom event with me live, more clearings and activations, and a little bit of coaching done on the Zoom with you guys. And then last night I did the 4th thing, an hour-long, where I go up into this space and just listen to your consciousnesses and just pound out clearings. So that's Activate Your Magic, and then the 3 videos, and you get it free if you buy the book. So you can save for the price of the book. You get all of that. DragonMasterCreatrix.com. That's my most recent book. I released it the day after inauguration this year in 2021.
Beautiful.
Then there's a free monthly call that we do. I have that coming up every last Thursday of the month. If you go to my website and you see all the way to the right, New Start Here, you can check that out too. All my books are on Amazon under Alison with 1 L and then J middle initial KAY.com. Free Facebook group, Vibrational Upgrade.
And to make things easy for all our listeners, I will definitely, of course, include links to all of that value that you are providing in the show notes to this episode.
Cool.
Dr. Alison.
What was your question?
You ready for the grand finale question? You just realized the power to telepathically communicate to all of humanity. What do you say?
It's all about love. Love is the harmony and the glue.
Ascenders, that is going to be all for this conversation that I got to have with Dr. Alison Kay. I hope that the episode was able to support you with clearing away those blocks, those limiting subconscious beliefs, so that you can begin manifesting even more magic. Before we go here, I'm gonna put that ask out one last time for this episode at least. If you enjoyed the episode or supported by it, please consider sharing it with 3 people that you care about in support of them and their journeys and our collective at large. Because as each and every one of us steps into becoming a greater expression of our purpose and our potential, well, it serves the all. Because together we ascend, family. Anyways, Ascenders, that is going to be it for this episode of the Awaken podcast. I want to thank you for listening once again. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And until next time, keep ascending.